Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I'm taking a look at the Archos A70, an internet tablet based around the Android operating system. It's running version 2.1, not the 2.2 that Archos originally promised at launch. However, it should be getting an update sometime this month, so that is definitely very promising. But let's talk about what you get at the $275 price point inside this 7-inch tablet. Now, the 7-inch screen is capacitive, much like most of the competition that's out there, like the Galaxy Tab. However, it's not a 1024 by 600 resolution. This pixel density race that has happened, Archos is ignoring, and I don't blame them. This 7-inch tablet has an 800 by 480 resolution, which is actually more of the standard of what you'll be seeing for all of the Android marketplace and general applications that you'll want to be using on a device like this until Gingerbread or a formal OS for Android tablets really hits the market sometime in mid-2011, even though they're claiming the first quarter. I'll believe it when I see it. The point is that Archos has done a really good job here of incorporating an older architecture in terms of processor in the ARM Cortex A8 chip. It's been around for a couple of years, so it doesn't have the power that you will find in the Tegra 2, like in the ViewSonic tablet review that I did previously, but it is a proven chip that does have a lot of software support, so that's definitely a good thing. It also allows them to get in there at that $275 price point. But speaking of the internals, let's get back to them. It's got 256 megabytes of RAM, for apps, which is not a great thing. That's the same amount as the iPad, pretty low, lower than most high-end smartphones, and certainly lower than the ViewSonic G tablet or the Samsung Tab, which both are at 512, so that's not great. But hopefully if this device gets rooted, that won't be an issue because you'll be able to store your apps on your SD card. Speaking of SD cards, even though this device only has 8 gigs of internal storage, it does have a micro SD card slot that allows you to expand your storage up to 32 gigabytes, which is huge. So, and I've got one in there and it's great, and I highly recommend it if you're going with the 8 gig version of this tablet, which is, by the way, the only one available right now, even though they do have a 250 gig hard disk drive based unit, which is obviously thicker, heavier. That device, I think, is priced at $350, and then of course they have two different 10-inch models, an 8 gig at $300 and a 16 gig at $350. All really attractive, but again, I believe this 7-inch form factor is where it's at, but I'll get to that a little bit later. It of course has a front-facing webcam, which is part of the standard so far of what we have continued to see from Android tablets, so that's a good thing. No problems with that at all. Really just, is able to get you through video conferencing, and it works. Is it great? No, but it's there and it's functional, and that's definitely a good thing. The screen, as I mentioned before, good resolution for Android apps in the current state of things and what Froyo has to offer. Going ahead, questionable, but the point is it'll scale most things. In terms of how well it does on viewing angles, as I mentioned in my ViewSonic review, the viewing angles were terrible. Here I've got good news. The viewing angles are good, and that you can attribute to Archos being a PMP manufacturer. The French, company has a long history of making great products in that realm, which I've owned many of and been happy with. So they don't disappoint in the screen department. Viewing angles are good. It is not an IPS panel like is found in the iPad. But again, remember, this is a much less expensive device. You have to take that into account. It does have front-facing stereo speakers, which I happen to like. A lot of these tablets have side speakers, which just really don't lend to a multimedia experience. So I think I've covered everything in terms of specs and hardware. It also does have a kickstand, but let me show you guys physically what you actually get in the Archos 70. The Archos 70 is built around an aluminum internal body. Outside of that, however, it is an all-plastic enclosure, so it is really light, even though it does feel very solid. It's very thin, as you can see. On the left side of the device here, we have a power port, an HDMI port, a 3.5mm headphone jack, a micro USB port, and then a micro SD card slot, as I mentioned before, which is really important to any tablet these days. Nothing along the bottom of the device except for the lip here for the kickstand, which you can see it's not made of the best quality plastic, but certainly does the job. I'm really happy with it. Nice to have a kickstand. Again, just, you know, alludes to that Archos is aware of what someone would really want and need out of a device like this. As you can see on the right side, you have your power button, your power LED light, which will tell you when charging is done and when obviously the device is on, and then your volume rocker. I do wish the power button was a little bit more exposed. I do, you know, sometimes find it difficult to get it pressed. Not a big deal really though. Back has a brushed aluminum look and feel, even though it is plastic, but it's nice nonetheless. And of course, as I mentioned before, you have your webcam, that left stereo speaker and right stereo speaker, nothing along the top. And as you can see, I'm running Launcher Pro. G-Sensor, not as quick as what we saw on the ViewSonic tablet, but still pretty good as long as you have it calibrated properly. Now, as you can see, I'm running Launcher Pro, and it's not aligned properly on the home screen. The only thing I can attribute this to is that Archos has incorporated on-screen Android buttons rather than capacitive hardware or physical hardware buttons. So as you can see, you've got your search, home, menu, and back, or rather settings and back, all on screen, eating into the 7-inch real estate. Not a great thing, but not a big deal. It really does run relatively smoothly, but I think that accounts for why Launcher Pro is not lining up properly. Of course, just by moving it, it's now fine. As you can see, if I scroll back and forth, it's fixed itself. I'm assuming it has something to do with the mapping there from those keys. But as you can see, I've customized Launcher Pro so that I have Google Talk, Google Voice, as well as the Marketplace and Angry Birds ready to go, and then my web browsers, etc., Astro, Facebook. Again, you will need to install Android Marketplace, side load it through a hack, which you can find at Archos fans forums, and you know, the only reason again is because this is not a Google license supported Android device, so it does not include Marketplace, but again, that's easily remedied, as I pointed out. Now, let me show you guys what the web browsing is like. Hopefully, as I'm doing this demo, you're also seeing that the screen is really reflective, as I mentioned, but viewing angles are really solid, which is good. Also, the bezel is a fingerprint magnet, and but that's a small complaint. Again, a $275 tablet, and it does really work as a web browser, even though, you know, again, you're seeing this glitch. So let's take a look at the web browsing. And as you can see, I've got ESPN up here, the NFL. Really responsive screen, I would say. Occasionally when I'm typing, it doesn't keep up, but perfect form factor, by the way. I'm going to pull up the keyboard just so you guys can see that, of course. So let's say I want to navigate to Engadget. See, it takes a second, but up comes Engadget, as you can see. And it does a pretty good job. I can tell you that typing on the keyboard is easier in portrait, and that's something that you can do with 7-inch tablets that you cannot with 10. And that's another reason I do prefer the 7-inch form factor. You know, the screen is big enough, but when it comes to thumb typing, you'll be able to do so in the 7-inch form factor in portrait. With a 10, you know, typing in portrait is almost impossible. But again, you can see really responsive, no issues there, nothing like the ViewSonic clearly, and just to demonstrate pinch to zoom, no problem there either. As you can see, I may have just clicked something. No, yes, I am loading the Optimus 7 review, something I am not interested in. Yeah, it's loaded up already. You know, the Wi-Fi signal's pretty strong. And again, battery life is pretty good, you know. It's right there with just about everything else in the market. So I'm impressed so far with what I've seen. You know, Archos is out of stock on these right now, but I'm sure they'll be getting more in. Again, really slim, really light. Just to give you guys scale, here it is with my Motorola Droid X. You can see, you know, nowhere near the same size. For those of you who felt that, you know, it was somewhere in the same vicinity, it isn't. You know, not really comparable to a 4.3-inch screen phone. So really liking this tablet, and hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer. And again, please feel free to subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Later.